The guest doesn't need you to be perfect. The guest needs you to be present.
Welcome to the Church Staff Book Club. I am Jonathan Malm.
I'm Jason Young.
And we are continuing our conversation about the comeback effect. We're going to be talking about chapter 4, Be Fully Present. And whether you're reading along with us, whether you're just tuning in, we hope that you can get a lot of good stuff from this podcast. Obviously, grab the book. But if you don't worry, we got you covered. We'll tell you what the general idea of the book is, general idea of the chapter, and get right into the conversation. Be really practical. So, be fully present. Jason, what does this chapter talk about? Just summarize it.
Yeah, well, you've heard us talk a lot about hospitality, and if you think about it, hospitality isn't multitasking, but that's what a lot of us pride ourselves on doing. Mm-hmm. Hospitality is about giving someone your full attention, and AKA the title of the chapter, Be Fully Present. And so really it's talking through, like, the guest doesn't need you to be perfect. The guest needs you to be present. The problem is sometimes things get in the way. So what are some of those things, and how can you know that you are showing up in a fully present manner with each guest? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, so we talk about simple things like body language. What is your body language? So here's the worst thing is your phone. If we're talking about welcome team, if we're talking about greeters, having this phone available. And I know I constantly talk to people who ask me this question to work at the church, like, I can't get my volunteers to put down their phone, or I can't get my volunteers to, like, stop talking to their friends, or I can't, all these things. And so consequently the guest comes up and says, hey, how's it going? Like they just feel like I'm an afterthought. So that fully present thing is not happening. We talk about the idea of just simply empathizing when things go wrong. I think so often, our default stance whenever something goes wrong is to become defensive, either to defend the organization, to defend the person they're complaining about, or defend ourselves. I can tell you a story about that. We had, I won't say what church this was, but we were at a church, and we had our new baby, our second kid, and we sent them into the nursery, and then we got them back, and there was a full bottle of milk inside, and they said, and here, he drank this bottle. And that second bottle was not his. That bottle was not his bottle of milk. That was empty. And the full one that we gave them was still full. And so we're like, well, that's not his milk. And the poor volunteer, not really, just started saying, no, it was. We're like, no, it's not his bottle. We promise it's not his bottle. She's like, no, this is the bottle that was in there. And she kept defending. And I guess she was the person who gave him the bottle. But we could not get her to acknowledge that, like, she did something wrong. And it was very frustrating. My wife was like, we're never going to send our kid back there. Like, we're just going to keep them in service with us. Like, we don't trust this place. Like, finally, the kid's pastor, like, called us and said, hey, we figured out whose bottle it was. But like, in that moment, the problem had happened, right? The damage had been done. We just needed someone to be like, oh, dude, I'm sorry. That was not okay. I don't know how that happened. I'm sorry. Just, like, apologize. Because here's the thing is, like, I know that the person was a volunteer. I know that they're watching my kid for free. But we were wronged. And, like, we were actually scared. Like, what if our kid had an allergy? What if our kid had, like, we didn't know, like, was it someone else's breast milk? Was it formula? Was it regular milk? Like, what was this stuff that you gave our baby?
Yeah.
And in that moment, we just needed, like, empathy instead of defense. Just someone to be like, wait, what is going on in this moment? It's not me being attacked as a volunteer. It's someone is kind of scared for the new baby. What can I do to help try to make it right? That being fully present moment.
Yeah. And I mean, you take your example and you think about other examples, like I think about the multitasking greeter. This is classic. That they're talking to you, the guest, while simultaneously they're waving to three other people. Maybe they're just in their name tags, and they're kind of giving them little the shooters, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, do you know I'm still here? It's that, or like I'm listening pastor role. It's you're talking to the pastor, the church staff person, but they're clearly, like, scanning. Their eyes are kind of left and right, scanning for someone, or scanning to leave, or maybe even the flip side. that a volunteer staffer, but let's say volunteer maybe be a better example, that they're in the robot mode. They're so focused on the procedure and the performance that it's trumping the person, right?
Yeah.
And so you've got these different illustrations of like things that could actually happen. I guess the question I have for you, Jonathan, when we think about these, Sunday experiences or weekend experiences, whenever your services are at your church, what do you think keeps us, or what are some things that keep us from being fully present with people?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's just not having that break. Like we arrive maybe an hour or two early and we're just doing our thing and we're talking to our friends. And then without even noticing it, the service comes. And then we're still in kind of that preparatory, like focusing on tasks mode. And that's one of the practical ideas that I regularly pitch to people is this idea of like having a game time.
Yeah.
Like, so, you can even have one of those like horns go over the sound system, right? Where it's like, brr, brr, brr. Like we're in game time right now. So for the next 10 minutes, 15 minutes, so 10 minutes before service, maybe 5 minutes after service, put away your phone. Don't talk to the people you normally talk to. This is just our time to focus on guests coming in. Yeah. And kind of that demarcation of like, this is now time where we focus on the person instead of focusing on all the things that have happened. When I used to lead worship, one of my favorite things to do was to like, before the first song, I would say, hey, I want you to just imagine that thing that's like frustrating you, that thing, the test that you're worried about tomorrow, the meeting that you're worried about this week. Just want you to hold it in your hand and imagine it there. And then I just want you to take that and just put it under your seat. And it'll be there whenever service is over. You can pick it back up if you want, or you can just leave it there and just trust God with it, right? Like that was kind of like my pattern that I always start with the worship service with. But I love that idea of just like, let's acknowledge that thing that's like in our mind that's distracting us, that's like we're fixated on, and let's just put it aside for a little bit. That's one of the things that I think is regular. What do you think is the main reason that causes us to not be present?
Bro, don't laugh at me. I think all these are going to start with the letter P. So if you're a good, like, there's somebody listening that's like, oh yeah, give it to me.
You do too much. You do too many like research papers and stuff, and so you always like try to.
Yeah, probably. I would say I think, and maybe this is self-indictment. I'm at confession right now, but I think it's pressure. So pressure to get it right, or the pressure to always be right, whatever the story is. But there's this pressure, and it could be related to time, right? But there's pressure happening. I think it's pace. I think like just the pace of things, and maybe if you're listening right now, like you get that the pace of things. Especially if you're a staffer and you're investing in volunteers, your pace might be all over the place, or the pressure for you is to have a fast pace. And so but remember, you, the leader, you're the thermostat. You're setting the temp. You're not the thermometer reflecting the temp. And so I think that's a distinction. But I think pressure, I think pace. I think there's still this thing about performance that can get in the way. That if we're not careful, performance is greater than presence. But people would rather be really seen than quickly served. And I think, I'm not saying sacrifice performance, because we want to be excellent, but I even think you can dress it up, and your language and semantics could be interesting. And then the fourth P, and this is not a bad thing, but people. I think just it's hard sometimes to be present with people because of people. And when there's a lot of people, it's, well, I want to be present with everybody, but the person in front of you is gauging whether you're fully present with them or not. So I think a lot of these things, or all of these things, could get in the way or be challenging. At least they were challenging for me, and they're probably challenging for your volunteers. And we've talked about this before, that whatever you model to your team tells your team, this is how we do it. This is who we are, right? And so I think this is a question for you, the leader, like how present are you with people? Because remember this, it's like holding up a cheerleader megaphone. You talked about the horn earlier, but like a megaphone, whenever you're choosing to be fully present, and we can unpack different avenues like emotionally and mentally and spiritually and all that, physically fully present. In essence, what you're doing in that megaphone is you're declaring to everybody else that, Jonathan, you are the most important person to me. And I'm telling everybody else that fact. And I promise you, if you can do this more often, you will create more meaningful and memorable moments, because these are few and far between, especially when you go to the fast food or big box retail store or the theme park, like a hotel. A lot of places don't do this. So if you can do this, you really are creating yourself, by giving somebody a distinctive about you.
Yeah, I love what you say about the idea of pressure. I do think that whenever I look back on that experience, that story that we had with my baby, is that there's sometimes so much pressure for excellence that people are afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And so it does become very defensive. I think this person was like, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble. How do you get in trouble as a volunteer? What? You're just like not going to be able to serve anymore? Like that's not really trouble. It's the like, someone is displeased with me. They're going to send out a passive aggressive email saying, hey, make sure and check bottles. They're going to send out like, it's going to be this thing that is almost worse than if someone say, hey, we had this problem, just don't do it again. Like we make it this bigger thing because we're trying to help people save face, or because we're trying to like make things so excellent. There's this pressure. And so there's this fear of like, I'm going to get things wrong. And it does start with the leader. Like what are you as a leader communicating to your team? When something goes wrong, do you do those passive aggressive emails? When something goes wrong, do you, like instantly make a negative face and like make it a big deal? Are you a little bit like, are you sometimes weirdly enough, like the passive aggressive, like the smiling is worse than if you were just like, dude, that wasn't okay. Like, but if you're like, hey, so we really need to stop doing that, right? Like that almost is worse to me than like, just be like, hey, let's make sure we don't do that. Okay. Like, so what are you communicating? I mean, we talk about this a lot in Likeable Leader, right? Like, what do you communicate through your body language, through the words you use? But yeah, I think that's so much of it, is what are you giving to your people?
Well, and what you said earlier, sometimes it's just not about volunteers, and guiding volunteers to remember they're kind of going on stage, not as a performer, but to, public facing, if you will. And when you think about the staff person, for you, it's another work day if you're not careful, right? And volunteers are another way to help get your work done. But they're people too that deserve your presence too. And so what do they feel from you so that they know, man, I want, the guest to feel this from me. Think about, if you're watching, listening right now, think about somewhere you've shopped or where you've stayed, or a theme park. Just think of a place that when they took care of you, you felt like you were the only person that existed. I guarantee you this is not the norm in everyday living.
Yeah.
You probably remember that moment, and you remember how it felt. And you said, man, like, this is amazing. I want to tell people about this. I want to come back here. That's similar to the idea of what we're talking about is, imagine if you could give that to your volunteer, and imagine if you and the volunteer could give that, to every guest, as if they were the only person in the room, because you don't ever know what they're walking into that church with, a situation, a feeling, decisions they're making, something they just made, something they just lost, uncertainty in their lives, whatever it might be. And when you show up for them, with them, meaningful and memorable moment. So it's something that is worth the effort, and it's worth doing consistently. But as staffers, we got to model this to volunteers so they know what we're talking about, and they know how it feels.
Yeah, I think I deal with this a lot as a parent, where my problem is I'm on social media, right? So I'm always looking for the next meme to share on my story. I'm always I'm always wanting to engage with people in messages, right? And like I just every now and then hear my son say like, hey dad, watch this. And I'm like, okay, I'll watch it. And it takes longer than 10 seconds for him to do the thing that he's trying to show me to do. And so I get back on my phone, right? And there comes this point where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to put my phone across the room. So I will go and put it on its charger, and I'll come back and say, okay, show me what you're wanting to do. And I'm just gonna my eyes are just like wanting to get off of him, and I just have to bring it back. And it's something intentionally you have to do. It's a mind exercise, really. But I mean, there's that tangible thing of putting my phone away. But for a staff member, for a volunteer, there is this mind exercise of I have to put that thing away and glue my eyes on this person. And the first 20, 30 seconds, it's difficult, but then it gets easier. And it's funny, I have this friend who, Josh Engler, he's just this sort of thing is just natural for him. We'll go to a restaurant and the waiter, will come take our order. And then about 5 minutes later, the waiter's telling Josh his life story. Oh yeah, my girlfriend and I are having a fight right now. And Josh didn't ask anything. He didn't invite this. It's just his presence.
Yeah.
People open up to him. And so I'm sitting there can we order our food? I appreciate you. I appreciate what's going on right here, but I also want to eat so we can go back to work, right? My tendency is not to be fully present, right? And his tendency is just I'm here with you immediately. So I have to learn that. I have to be very intentional about being fully present with the people that I'm with. So for you, maybe you're a fully present person by nature, maybe you're not, but you can learn it.
Yeah, you 100% can learn it, but you have to deliberately practice it. So speaking of, let's talk through some of these channels. And we talk about a couple pathways of being fully present. You've already referenced one of them in particular. So physically, right? So our body language, and when you're talking to somebody and they're with you or they're not, but maybe we can give you an indicator, something very practical that you can use.
We'll get back to the conversation, but real quick, I want to tell you about our sponsor. Church hospitality, guest services, first impressions. These are phrases we as church leaders are very familiar with. But sometimes through the grind of daily tasks and prepping for church each week, we lose the heart of hospitality. Guest care becomes a checklist rather than a discipleship effort. First Impressions is an organization committed to helping churches create meaningful connections with guests, from the first visit to lifelong discipleship. Whether you're looking to sharpen your team's skills, build a proven follow-up plan, or take your guest experience to the next level, they've got you covered. Through their First Impressions online conference, First Impressions live conference, First Impressions Academy, and executive coaching, they equip churches with the strategies, systems, and support you need to invite, welcome, and connect with your church guests. Learn more at firstimpressions.church. And now back to the conversation.
So it's interesting that you've probably heard the old adage before, be where your feet are, right? Well, let's take it a step further. If you're in a conversation with somebody, again, if you're a staff person, volunteer, and this isn't just helpful at church, this is just in life. This shows up in life. Wherever your feet are is a real big indicator of where you are wanting to go. For example, if I'm in a conversation with, you, Jonathan, and I've got things to do, you're talking too much, I'm distracted, whatever the reason is, typically, and everybody, if you're watching, listening, you know how this goes. Your one foot can often, you'll lean on one and one foot kind of goes into a particular direction. And if it keeps going, your second foot can do the same thing. What's interesting is this. Notice this about your own feet, but notice this about people on the other side of you. Now, parenthetical note, if you notice somebody doing this, don't say, oh, I can obviously tell your feet are pointed away. You're not interested in this conversation. Don't say that, because then that's a whole nother conversation. That's weird. But just begin to pay attention to your feet and their feet, because here's what happens. Feet, when they begin to point away from someone, always point towards the closest exit. And it's the brain's way of trying to figure out a way to get out.
Yeah.
So when you are not squared up with someone and you notice your feet shifting, remind yourself, square back up, point your feet. I'm still engaged. I'm still fully present with you. It's a way to, for body language. Again, I could unpack stuff for the next 3 hours about face and the rest of your body on how you could be fully present. But feet, super, super important, and it's subtle, and the brain scans the body and will always rank body language over words. And so as the brain scans.
Being fully present, interrupting you.
Yep.
How do you balance this? So I'm imagining, because I am the foot person, I can think of 3 people that I regularly angle my feet to try to cue them that like, hey, I need to leave in this conversation, and they don't get it, right? Like they don't get that. So like, I shouldn't be doing that, right? Like obviously, but like I do have things to do, and I think that's a lot of people in church staff that they feel the tension between like, I do have something to do. If you're a pastor, I got to get on stage. If you're the worship leader, if you are, you know, you have another volunteer with a problem, or you told someone you'd relieve them and you're on your way to get there, right? Like how do you balance this, like being fully present with, I actually do have stuff I need to do. Like there is a, like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I know pastors will have someone that's like with them to be like their kind of bodyguard to help like stop those conversations, right? But like if you're just a lower level volunteer leader, you don't have that.
Yeah. So really you're making the choice on how you want to engage or disengage with someone. So sometimes we don't want to use our words because we feel like it might be rude, but our feet are still saying the same thing our words are saying, and the brain picks up on that. So
which is almost ruder, almost to the point of me saying like the smiling, like, hey, we really need to, and you're like, that's actually more aggressive than if you would have just told me.
Well, yes, and if your eyes are darting around, you know, so really you could say, I still do this all the time. You could still say, let's say you and I were talking, and it was an unexpected, lengthier conversation. I might say, hey, Jonathan, I want to make sure that we can continue this conversation, but I am supposed to meet, you know, Stacy in 3 minutes, and it's going to take me about 2 to get over there. So is that something that, you know, we could chat later on today? We could connect tomorrow. So it's a little bit of a postponement type of thing. And you could say that 10 different ways. Sometimes what I will say to people, I'll say, you know, you're chatting with me and I do need to go. Sometimes we don't want to say it, so we'll disguise it. Hey, I appreciate you sharing that with me. And we'll tend to move away versus just telling people what it is or why it is. I find people receive that a whole lot better than me trying to like do my little tips and tricks. Sometimes they work, but a lot of times the person keeps talking and I'm like, oh my word, you didn't pick up on the cue.
Hint.
Like, come on. Like, I'm going to hold up a sign that says, you know, end this. Versus just being upfront and saying, you know, Jonathan, what's hard is when it's a serious conversation. Yeah. Right? Or
like an emotional conversation where they're like kind of tearing up and you're like, I have to be on stage.
Yep. And that is something that I will say, this is terrible timing on my part, because I know what you're sharing with me takes a lot of vulnerability and trust. I want to make sure I honor this conversation, and I want to make sure I honor the fact that I'm supposed to be on the platform in like 30 seconds. But here's the other thing. If I'm trying to run the clock to the very last second as a leader, I don't need to do that, because that puts me in a predicament and it puts the other person in a predicament. So as much as possible, it doesn't always work. Instead of like running it to the edge of time, let me back up a little bit. If I've got to be on platform in 4 minutes, I don't need to be pushing it to the last 20 seconds, because then I'm mentally not going to be present with that person.
Chopping them off. Yeah.
That's right, chopping them off. And I might not be fully engaging on the platform, which may be impacting 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people, whatever. So yes, I find myself in these situations constantly, and I used to kind of tiptoe around it. Sometimes I'll still use tips and tricks, but sometimes I just tell the person straight up because it's faster. And many times that person, not always, but many times that person will say, oh, totally cool. Go do your thing. We'll catch up. All right, great. Or, nope, I don't even need anything else. Conversation's done. Go do your thing. All good. Yeah. So there's a physical side.
Yeah. Well, I think those two things that you really demonstrated with that is humility and empathy. Empathy saying like, I see how important this is, and acknowledging that. But then humility saying like, I'm so sorry, I miscalculated my time. Like saying something like that, like I shouldn't have gotten in this conversation with you in the first place because I had to be on stage in 3 minutes, and I knew I shouldn't have done that. I should have told you at the beginning, right? Like, I am so sorry. I know this is so important, and I want to listen to this. I didn't realize the time was so close. I have to get on there. But like just humbling yourself and saying like, I made the mistake. It helps to deflect the like, they're not the mistake, I'm the mistake, right? Like, which is kind of like the whole breakup thing, right? It's not you, it's me, right? But like, it is a little bit of that where it like realizing that like, oh, this is going to make them feel bad. And that's so often why we don't do that. And then we hope that they're going to wrap it up in 20 seconds so that we can get on stage, right? And they don't.
Yeah.
So just knowing, trusting that like, hey, this is probably not going to happen. I need to preemptively. And I love what you all said also about margin, the idea of like, give yourself some margin so you're not running. I see everyone running up on stage and like, that's maybe not a healthy thing to do. Like, I love, there's this youth pastor at 180. It was a long time ago. His name was Blaine Bartell. I heard him speaking somewhere, and he said, you know, have you ever seen ducks in a pond, right? Like they, on the surface, they're like just chilling, looking cool. Underneath the water, they're free to paddling, right? And like that's how we approach ministry. We're like, everything is calm and casual and relaxed. We work hard, you know, we're doing the thing, but we're also fully present at the surface, right? Like, so I think that's I don't know, a great way to say it. Like, don't have to rush everything.
Yeah, because remember, I mean, hospitality is also communicated in that moment in the example we're talking about, right? So hospitality is always showing up, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but moments with people, even if it's the moment of you having to kind of end a conversation or doing a little to be continued, moments create memory, and they may not, you know, put a stake in the ground of a you know, memory with you in that moment, but they will remember how you handled that moment, that you still demonstrated hospitality while also needing to go do, you know, A, B, and C. So every single moment, you know, has the possibility to create these memories. And so your presence is super important. We talk about emotionally fully present, which you've referenced, you know, empathy. And empathy is an interesting word, and depending on who you ask, I mean, I think clarifying empathy and sympathy, two different things, right? And sometimes I hear them used interchangeably, but when we talk about empathy, it's really listening and trying to understand the emotions and the situation of the person on the other side of you and not filtering it through your experience. Because if you're not careful, we filter it through our individual experience and then we label it with, well, that has more meaning because I have filtered it. I've had something like it, more meaning. My situation wasn't as bad. I think less meaning, right? So it's trying to listen to people. It's trying to pick up, you know, what they're saying and not saying. It's trying to understand the emotions, and I'm not filtering it through my experience, which is the example that you gave, you know, earlier, you know, with the milk example. So, and the other really accompanying pathway is mentally, and this idea is pressing pause on what you're saying so you can press play on what the other person is saying. So press pause on what you're thinking, press pause on what you're thinking and press play on what they're saying. Because if you're having all these stories go on in your head and I'm also trying to like take in everything you're saying, I'm not being fully present. So it's, you know, what will it take? A quieter spot, you know, eye contact. And I'm listening, you know, through what you're saying, through what you're not saying. This is where I find you could pick up a lot of what people are not saying, which is really important. Paying attention to their body language, paying attention to their tone and their word usage, right? So you're listening to all this. And then the final little pathway we talk about is being fully present spiritually. And this is understanding where God is placing you and for what reason. And when you understand that God has placed you as a greeter or as a staff member or as an usher or in the parking lot or as a small group leader or wherever, when you understand what he has entrusted to you, what a wonderful motivator that you not only want to be fully present with people, but you realize that there's an account that you have to give to the Lord Jesus, that has entrusted you and invited you to partner with him in that great work.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I think about it though, the big issue is Sunday morning is rushed.
Yeah.
It is rushed. We have 4 services, potentially 1,000 people coming to our church, right? And 20 of them need our attention. It's just not realistically going to happen. And I think a lot of this should be fixed preemptively or proactively.
Yeah.
I think so often we're not. So as a leader, we're talking to leaders here. Are you checking in with your volunteers during the week?
Yeah. Meaning,
are you having conversations with them beyond just the planning center request, beyond just like, are you actually checking in and say, hey, how can I pray for you this week? And then that's when on a Wednesday they can tell you what's going on in their life. So you're not having to that takes one person out of the equation on a Sunday morning where you're not having to like be fully present for 50 people because you realistically can't as a leader.
Yeah.
So much of what we need to do is focusing on people during the week. So putting a to-do list item on your calendar saying, hey, check in with 10 of my volunteers this week, see how they're doing, see if I can pray for them. Remember, just think about them. Oh yeah, they told me they were having a test. Check in on that test. So you don't have to hear about it on Sunday morning, right? I think that can take so much of the pressure off because we're trying to engage with so many people on Sunday morning. We talk about this all the time, that small groups, circles are better than rows, right? Like if you can get into a small group, you're going to actually be able to find connection. But we don't do that so often with our own volunteers. So finding ways you can alleviate that pressure, take things off of, basically your goal is just to create more margin on Sunday morning so that you can be more fully present with people. And I think that will be the key. Anything that we're out of time, but anything to add to that?
No, I think it's good. I think making it a priority, planning better, and enjoying the volunteers and the guests that you get to be with. The greatest gift you can give to somebody is the gift of attention and presence because it will be meaningful to them.
That's solid. So we'll be talking about chapter 5 next week. Again, if you're reading along with us. If not, we'll just see you here and we'll tell you what it's about then. But looking forward to see you guys next week.